Removing the Mask, One Survivor's Art. My artist therapy began back in the 80s when, at the suggestion of my therapist, I began expressing my emotions through painting rather than punching walls. As I recall, my therapist asked me, "What would your anger about your abuse look like?" I immediately drove home, placed a small blank canvas inside a shower stall, and began throwing globs of paint at it. Before the canvas was even dry, I drove it back to the therapist's office and yelled at her, "There, that's what my anger looks like." From there on out, for the most part, I focused on art as a means to express all that had been pent up inside me for so many years. The artwork has been extraordinarily helpful in showing folks what lives within me. Over subsequent years, my artwork has evolved as I have. From angry victim survivor to advocate for the safety of children from child sexual abuse and recognition of adult survivors of child sexual abuse. The art has been my go-to means of telling folks how invisible I feel as a survivor. There are millions of us, survivors who were never encouraged to speak up when they were kids and continue to be silenced and ignored as adults by their family, friends, and society in general. That's wrong. I encourage any survivor, when talking of your abuse is too difficult or seems too futile, attempt visual expression of your pain in any way you possibly can in order to cope with your history and to cope with the society in which you live. This is what happens when you throw paint at a canvas. It comes out saying, "Incest murders a child's soul." This is the effect trauma has on a little one. It is incomprehensible that this happens to a child and that they have to live with it forever. It doesn't go away. Parts of it are always inside you. I have come to understand that as an incest survivor, I am invisible to family, friends, and society. I have to wear a mask in order to be seen. The mask is acceptable to family, friends, and society. The true me, the all of me, is not. If I am willing to wear a mask and play the role of happy patter, snappy chatter, I am cool. I am acceptable. And this is the mask, the happy mask, the clown face. This is what people want to see. Now, if you reach out and pull this mask off by the red nose, you will see behind it the incest issues that live inside me, the ugly stuff that other people don't want to see. But the ugly stuff, the vapors, are there, and they are there all the time. In order to be seen, I have to wear this mask. These are the vapors. Vapors are uglies. These are physical manifestations of the ugly feelings that float around inside my body. These are old pieces of things I found in my studio. I just tried to make them as unattractive as possible. Again, they are the visual expression of the flashbacks, odors, or the sounds of certain things that bring back upsetting memories and feelings. These are the vapors, and they are always inside me somewhere. If you look carefully at this canvas, it's kind of plain and abstract neutral. Some parts are busy, others aren't. But across this canvas, I have placed 3 footprints because I want people to know, even though they see me as invisible, that I am here. My footprints indicate my presence. I travel through this life as an entire person. I am the sum of all my experiences. I am not invisible. Survivors find a way to cope with their pain. We function and we contribute in all kinds of ways. We are visible if people are willing to see us. When we are bystanders to sexual abuse and incest, pedophiles gloat and say, "Thank you." Of course they do, because too few people are speaking up about the topic. Nobody is making it loud public knowledge that it is the epidemic that it is. Pedophiles love that. They just keep on keeping on. Family, friends, society in general. I don't hear you yelling and screaming because 1 in 3 to 4 girls and 1 in 4 to 5 boys are sexually abused before they're 18 years old. Bystanders have got to do something. In this country, a child is sexually abused every 9 minutes. That is despicable. So one day I got really ticked off and I painted this one. You know what, family, friends, and society? Screw you. So some survivors are recognized and supported. World War I survivors and vets, World War II vets, Vietnam vets, Iraqi vets, all kinds. But I don't see the support or services publicized and provided for adults who were sexually abused as kids. It's not there. You just don't hear about it, see anything about it. Yet these grown children are still plagued by PTSD and all kinds of emotional difficulties. And they find all kinds of ways to deal with the fact that they aren't recognized, just like vets do. Alcohol, violence, drug abuse. We've got to recognize what's right in front of us. My depression PTSD reared its head the day I saw the movie The Accused with Jodie Foster. I left the theater feeling something was really wrong. My depression took the form of the green monster and how the green monster was eating all these little kids, the souls of children who have been sexually abused. And if you look closely at the bowl, you can see inside the green monster the figures of many, many other little children that he has swallowed. He was big at that time in my life. He was overwhelming. In my mind, this is what he looked like. As I continued with therapy and discovered painting, the green monster started to lose his grip a little bit. The painting and my artwork was so meaningful to me and gave me a place to express myself that his presence in my life wasn't quite as strong. He was losing his grip a bit. And the more I healed, the more the monster receded. This bowl shows me in a very good place in my life. I was doing a lot of other enjoyable art, and the monster became a dot, still green and unattractive, but certainly not as overwhelming as he had been. For me, this truly shows what expressing yourself through art can do for you. This bowl is Pat and her inner child, Patty. To the left, you see the green monster again with a little bit of sunshine inside. And in the middle, Pat and Patty are growing. They are living together. They are recognizing the existence of one another. They are enjoying painting and being alive. Then move to the right side and you realize there's more sunshine than green monster. This is a good thing. It comes and goes. It ebbs and flows. It always has. Yes, this is what art is for me. This is the artist's palette as a balloon lifting me out of depression and ugly thoughts and bad times. And I think it can do that for other people as well. My studio is a safe place where I can go, where nobody can control me. Nobody can tell me what to do. I make the rules, if I want rules at all. It is the most freeing thing I have ever experienced in my life. It's just wonderful knowing it lives inside me and I can always go to it when I need to. I missed my mother and I needed my mother. She drank too much. She just wasn't there to talk to. If you look carefully to the right, you will see the word where. And you turn the bowl over and it says, "Where are you, Mom? I need you." and she was in the bottle. I couldn't make a connection to her when she drank. She wasn't the mom I knew at other times when we would play together outside or share her sense of humor. Once cocktail hour started, it all went down the tubes. This is my bedroom. I am lying in bed. The door is pushed open so the whole light spreads across me, and in walks the brother and his buddy. Brother had been left in charge of me while the parents were away. He and his buddy had been in the brother's bedroom drinking beer, as was usually the case. I was asleep, and the next thing I know, the buddy was holding me down. The brother is removing my pajama bottoms, and then the next thing I know, there is this incredible pain and terror, and I left my body and went to the ceiling and stared at the closet door. I couldn't be present. It was too awful. It was just abject terror. Worst of all was when they left the room. They were laughing. I have never gotten over the sense of humiliation I felt that night. It was just beyond my comprehension. On the back of the bowl, you will notice that I was scared to death that they would come back. I thought, where can I go? I couldn't leave my room because they would see me. So I decided to hide under my bed. They'll never think to look there. How naive was that? It was awful. Yes, the living room. This is the living room of the house I grew up in, middle school through high school. The green couch on the right is where I usually sat. You can see the kitchen counter, the cafe curtains that my mother made. The large figure is that of my father, who came out of the kitchen one night during cocktail hour. I was in the living room and was thinking, they are drinking too much again. Maybe if I put the bottle back in the cupboard, they will stop drinking. Well, as I was doing that, the father came out of the kitchen, saw me, stuck his big hand at me with his finger pointed and said, "You don't decide when that bottle goes away. I do." I was devastated. His words told me that my feelings about their drinking didn't matter to him. And later, after dinner, the father and mother would be sitting in their chairs. The father would eventually fall asleep, and the mother would be sitting there smoking her cigarette, and I would be afraid that she would fall asleep and the ashes would fall to the floor and the whole place would burn down. Then if you turn the bowl and look carefully, you will see drawn into the gray rug is the outline of an elephant. Of course, the elephant in the room was the alcohol. Nobody talked about it, but it had such a tremendous effect on me as a kid. They would fall asleep at night, and if I had problems with my homework, they weren't there to help me, or they didn't come up to say good night. I hated the drinking. I didn't invite friends over. I didn't want them to see my parents so sloppy and out of it. Society has to put a target on the backs of pedophiles. We just can't go on ignoring how much damage they do to our children. Children of the world belong to all of us, and having pedophiles running around harming our kids is something we cannot tolerate, something we simply cannot tolerate. We need to speak up, get up, and act. There's too much red on this bowl. I painted this with the intention of showing every third figure painted in red, primarily to indicate 1 in 3 girls or boys being abused. When I finished, there was a lot of red on the bowl. There's too damn much red on this bowl. I painted these canvases thinking I would take them to the doctor's offices that I would visit, thinking, well, they'll want to hang one of these back in their lunchroom, just as a reminder that so many of the patients that they see during the course of a day are survivors. They didn't. Doctors and nurses should know these things, that so many people are survivors. They should have an awareness of what childhood sexual abuse does to a person. It's something that all medical staff must be aware of to show respect for their patients. Have you ever asked an incest survivor what it's like being you? Well, of course not. You haven't ever asked anyone that question because you don't know the survivors around you. We are everywhere. It's not a lot of fun being a survivor. When I go to a restaurant, I like to sit with my back to a wall so I can see who's coming. I am always aware of who might be drinking too much or the way that people look at me. I notice how other people are interacting with one another. Is there going to be a confrontation or an argument? I am hypervigilant. I am always on guard. It's tough to relax sometimes. I used to punch walls. Before I could verbalize the pain I was feeling, I would punch walls, plaster walls, or door frames, because then my fist would swell and it would hurt like the dickens, and I could relate to that kind of pain. I could see it and feel it. Sometimes I couldn't punch hard enough, and it was kind of a very strange, satisfying pain. It was something I could look at, a physical pain I could cope with. The pain caused by the brother and father, I don't know. That was a whole different kind of pain. Here's the emperor walking down the road, and here I am sitting on the curb of Reality Road. The emperor and all his minions are walking down Denial Drive, which is a dead end. It boggles my mind that people can't see this epidemic and that they continue to march on as if I don't exist. We survivors don't exist. We are just sitting here on the curb and they don't see us, but we are here. We are all here. Relatively recently, I painted this bowl trying to depict what it's like to be a survivor in society and yet not really a part of society. You are on the outside. People hold hands. They are friends. They don't necessarily include you. They are uncomfortable reaching out to hold your hand because what happened to you upsets them or makes them uncomfortable. They are not quite willing to include you. I found this nest of wooden pieces in my studio, so I took them all apart and I thought, how convenient, there are 7 of them, having lived 70 years. Each one represents a decade of my life since the night of the rape. Since that night, I have been dragging the weight of PTSD behind me. I never know when a flashback will hit. I never know when a particular odor will strike me as being a trigger that will upset me. Sounds, all kinds of things. They just come up on you and you never know when it's going to happen. It's not like this childhood trauma is something I can just forget, because my brain doesn't let me forget. I am often triggered by things out of the blue. This is a 3-parter that indicates my early life where things are pretty bright, and then out of the blue you are raped in the middle of the night. You go through life being female, and then as you go further through life, you begin to realize that as far as what happened to you that night, you've become invisible. You all but disappear into the background, and that's the way you live out your life. People don't want to talk about what happened to you. They don't want you to express your feelings about it. That major experience, that horrendous experience, is just invisible. About 5 or 6 years ago, I realized that as far as family and friends go, they are of a club, and I am not. If I want to be a member of that club, I must make sure I don't talk about the issues of my past. If I agree to not talk about such things, I am welcome in their club. If I do talk about incest, I feel as though they quickly show me to the door. So I started reading about matriarchal civilizations and the goddess, and I thought, things would be so much different if that were the situation now. I was feeling pretty good the day I painted this bowl, and I mentioned things on this bowl that are about me, the positive side of me. I really like this bowl, its overall appearance. I like the colors. I wish I could feel like this bowl looks more often than I do. I wanted to paint a large canvas because I wanted bystanders, people with heads in the sand, and people who brush the issue under the rug to see themselves as I see them. I wanted to make it really clear that when you have your head in the sand, you are enabling pedophiles to murder the souls of kids. Above the three figures are the gravestones of all the souls that have been murdered. Above the gravestones is the dark, ugly pall that hangs over our society because we don't do enough to slow this crime of abuse. We can't just ignore the issue because it's too icky to think about. Responsible adults concern themselves with the health and well-being of kids. We should have our heads up, and we should be doing everything we can to protect children. I am hoping you find the gumption to help protect innocent children, and I am hoping that you will acknowledge and respect the adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. Sooner rather than later. It's been far too long. Centuries and centuries is far too long. Please don't be a bystander. Nobody escapes being wounded. The main question is not how can we hide our wounds so we don't have to be embarrassed, but how do we put our woundedness in the service of others? When our wounds cease to be a source of shame and become a source of healing, we have become wounded healers. Henri Nguyen.